Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Green Flag. I'm your host, Lukas Wacker, and with me, as always, we have Cushman. And welcome to the Azerbaijan Grand Prix preview episode here for round number 6 of the Formula One season. It's going to be an exciting race this year. This track is basically delivered since its inception from a couple of years ago. So very much looking forward to this weekend's racing around the streets of Baku. It's going to be a really fun Grand Prix. For the practice sessions, of course, you've seen, Red Bull being at the top of the timing sheets, Ferrari showing that Monaco speed wasn't no joke, but Mercedes definitely down the running order in practice. They are really sandbagging, or something is actually amiss there this weekend. But we'll get to all of that and more with our fantasy picks and explain our reasonings a little bit later on, as well give you our predictions for who's going to finish on the podium and the best of the rest as well. But let's get into the news and note for today's episode. And it's kind of a big one for later on in the season for F1's Asia stint, with the Singapore Grand Prix being officially canceled. That happened earlier on today. So unfortunate news there. Singapore, one of the most great spectacles on the F1 calendar, just cinematic wise, and just from the
physically demanding track as well with the humidity.
Absolutely. And underneath the lights, we don't get too many of those on the F1 calendar. And it absolutely is great to see when it is on the calendar. But unfortunately, due to COVID and everything like that, of course, as is the most cases with the cancellations of Grand Prix so far this season, it's going to be yet another one missing from the calendar. So it gives a lot of rumors about what could potentially take its place. United States could potentially have something. The Japanese Grand Prix could move up a week, allowing for a doubleheader in North America with the Austin Grand Prix there at the Circuit of the Americas. Or could they maybe look at Canada or something like that, maybe coming on to the calendar a little bit later on when COVID will hopefully be a little bit more tame there in Montreal. There's a lot of options for what they could go with. Nürburgring, I would love to see that, but it doesn't quite fit into the schedule. But there's lots of options that F1 can kind of work with here, especially since it is so late on the calendar. They have a little bit of maneuverability with their choices. So disappointing news for Singapore, but you have any initial impressions on who you would like to see fill that vacant spot in the calendar? Or who do you think might get that spot in the calendar, Kyle?
Yeah, this is a lot of possibilities that they've got here with this slot. For starters, it's unfortunate that we're losing Singapore street circuit with COVID and everything. It's very unlikely that you can really get to the street circuit stuff. It's great that we got Monaco in. It's great that we got Azerbaijan in. Other areas of the world, it's a lot more difficult to kind of get that situated, it just given where everybody's still at. So it's a very interesting spot in the calendar that opens up, because you look right now and what it was before, a very jam-packed part of the calendar. You look at going from Russia to Japan and then previously Singapore, all in like a 4-week span, and United States, Mexico, Sao Paulo. So you got a lot of distance traveled in short periods of time there. So can they fit something in? Yeah, they absolutely could. They could move the Japanese Grand Prix up a weekend to where Singapore was, move in an extra North American date there, whether that be 2 weeks afterwards or wherever it ends up laying there. That's definitely a possibility. I'm not really sure where they're going to go with this one. They could also just leave that off the calendar and just have 22 races this season. I think they'll try to get all 23 in if they can. I think most likely right now, honestly, is probably 2 United States races and potentially a return to Indianapolis. We've seen Roger Penske be very interested in returning a United States Grand Prix to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. It's been a long time since we've seen it, since the mid 2000s. And we know all the controversy that went on there with tire wars and everything like that. That's not an issue anymore. But I think that's probably most likely because the American market, the U.S. is going to be the easiest country of all those in the North American area to deal with in terms of getting an extra race in on short notice, all that kind of stuff. I do think that Canada maybe has a longer shot. But again, Montreal is partially a street course there with Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. It's not going to be easy to get there. It is going to be October time, so things should be pretty opened up. It should be a lot of second doses fully vaccinated in Canada. It should be a possibility, but there's still a lot of hurdles to go around. So hopefully, I would love to see it. I just don't think it's necessarily as likely as a potential replacement race at like Indianapolis or something, which I believe is the only other FIA grade circuit in the United States right now approved for Formula One, or just kind of leaving that weekend on its own.
I think both of those options would be absolutely exceptional for an F1 from an F1 fan's perspective. I think.
Okay, maybe it's sacrilege to say is a Canadian sitting here, but I would kind of love a one-off race at Indianapolis. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, if you're gonna do it, might as
well
just try it now.
We know we're gonna get Montreal, right? We know we're gonna get it into the future.
I don't need it. I would love to see an Indy kind of where I'm watching it as a really avid F1 fan. That would be awesome to see F1 take on Indianapolis, just the history that track beholds. And I think there would be an F1 kind of driver's dream as well. I think, they're always kind of fascinated by the Indy 500. They can never have the opportunity to race at Indianapolis. Well, maybe this is the year they get the chance. I'd be willing to sacrifice the Canadian Grand Prix later on this season if that's even a potential opportunity to have it in Indianapolis.
How dare you say that?
I know. I'm sorry, but
I'm the one who said it first. It's okay.
I know, but it's a tough one. I honestly, I just hope it's not really a back-to-back at Austin. I think that would just be a bit of a dud. I think they have to really try and push themselves a little bit here. And, the Montreal Canadiens just had 2,500 fans in their building. So it gives me a little bit of hope by the time October rolls around that, there could be some fans maybe in the stands in Montreal. But we'll leave that to the FIA and F1 to make their decision.
Still a long ways to go there. Yeah.
They have lots of room for, debating on what kind of thing goes on. Of course, we have an Austria doubleheader. I would hate to kind of see another doubleheader later on in the season. So I hope they kind of look at other options there for that vacant spot. But that's the only news and note for today's episode. A very quiet week for F1, but you kind of expect that around this time of the season. Not too much going on with the driver transfer market or anything like that. It's it's week by week kind of thing, and we'll see what happens from here on out with the calendar. But I think it's time we kind of preview the weekend here, Kyle, with our fantasy picks for Baku. You had a very successful weekend at the Monaco Grand Prix. You used your mega driver, your one and only usage of that on Max Verstappen. Very well used. It catapulted you to 990.
I was nervous. I'm not going to lie.
997 points to my 914 while I still have the mega driver remaining. So very close between the two of us. I feel confident. I was ahead going into Monaco, but with the triple the points for Verstappen, that's going to give you a huge advantage, especially with how he ran, leading all of the laps. And getting the actual race victory. I can definitely
say that having the mega driver on the lineup Monaco definitely spiced things up a little bit more than it probably would have been for anybody that didn't have that rating. I just gotta hope that when everybody else plays the mega driver, maybe it's not as good and I can make up some ground, because I had a bit of a slow start. We're up to 102.4 on the budget, so we've expanded things a little bit, slowly getting close to what I would probably deem my optimum lineup. Made a couple of changes this weekend, hoping to maybe boost that budget a little bit more, but we'll see how things play out here.
Yeah, for myself, I've got one change this weekend, keeping it nice and simple for myself, but I'm feeling good. F1 has actually been my strong suit with fantasy this year compared to NASCAR, so I'll take what I can get, and hopefully the consistent run of form can continue on on the streets of Baku. But let's go through our lineups that we have similarly than what we had in Monaco, and then we'll get to the change at the end of things here. You have two, I have one, so you obviously get to have that advantage of going a bit first with your first change. But we'll start off with Max Verstappen. I don't know if we need to spend too much time on him. The championship leader for the first time in his F1 career coming into this weekend looks very good on the timing sheet so far through FP1 and FP2. So I expect Max Verstappen to either be on the podium or actually winning this race when it's all said and done on Sunday. He's just been lights out. Consistency has been his key to success so far to start the season. Red Bull has provided him a very reliable car. So in turn, Verstappen is granting them with the constructors lead as well as the driver's lead. So Red Bull is firing on all cylinders right now, and there's no need to take Max Verstappen out of your lineups. And if you don't, I would highly suggest trying to work him into your lineup, because his points totals are there or there above of what Lewis Hamilton can bring to the table right now. So when you look at his budget and his price, he fits in perfectly. No reason to not have Max Verstappen in your lineup here for the Baku Grand Prix.
Yep, no reason to change up anything big like that. He's going to continue to increase in budget here. But one thing I will say is that in terms of the stats and his results at Azerbaijan, kind of similar as to what it was going into Monaco last time out. At Monaco, he had yet to finish on the podium. His best finish had been fourth because of the penalty, of course. He had the time penalty. The time prior that we'd been there in 2019, goes out, wins Monaco, dominant fashion, first ever podium finish there at Azerbaijan. Of course, there's been an incident or two, to say the least,
really?
in spectacular fashion. I don't know if you've ever seen it before.
Did Drive to Survive capture that moment? I'm not quite sure.
But anyways, does not have a podium finish so far in his career at Baku, and hasn't even qualified that well here, to be honest. Fourth and 2/5, and then best finish so far of fourth. So hasn't really broken through to the next level at Baku. That said, Red Bull looks to be the best car once again this weekend. Some similarities, at least in terms of the slow speed corners to Monaco, street circuit, all that kind of stuff. Of course, we know Baku is a much longer and has the straights as well. But I think everything's shaping up for another Red Bull victory this weekend with Max Verstappen at a top of the step. So Max Verstappen, no reason to change that up here this weekend.
No, finished fourth here last time out in 2019. Of course, we didn't have this race in 2020. So back-to-back weeks with kind of a new-ish track for some of these guys. The rookies that came in 2020 haven't raced here, as well as the guys, obviously, with Yuki Tsunoda, namely this time around. But for the second guy here, Lando Norris has been lights out this season. I think he has the fourth most points amongst anybody in F1 fantasy so far to start this season.
Sounds right.
He has tremendous value at 13.9 million. He's just grown each and every week. His consistency is unmatched so far for the level of car that he's in right now. Third in the Drivers' Championship. He's just been lights out for McLaren. I have no reason to take him out of my lineup. I can basically guarantee I will not be taking Lando Norris out of my lineup for the remainder of this season. I love the guy, and he's just been on another level right now. And when you look at what he's around with this price tag compared to the likes of Sebastian Vettel, Fernando Alonso, who are not going to get you near as many points as what Lando Norris is consistently bringing in, it's a no-brainer to keep the British driver in.
Yeah, and he's actually number 3 so far this season.
Number 3, he's ahead of
fantasy
Leclerc.
points. Yeah. He's at 151 this season. The next, of course, is Lewis Hamilton at 209. After him is Charles Leclerc at 103. So he's even got a big gap to number 4 there. He's been lights out. And even in his rookie season at Baku, qualified 7th, finished P8 as well. So strong results in the past at this track. McLaren doesn't look like they're best of the rest this weekend. Looks like Ferrari probably has that label again. But we've seen Norris be strong. He had a great lap going in FP1 until he went off, which we saw a couple of times for people there. But I think that McLaren has more race pace than they do qualifying pace. And at a street circuit that has DRS and the available to make passes and everything like that, I think that that's shaping up a much better for a team that has race pace versus qualifying speed than a Monaco did. So Lando Norris, definitely a big fan of that move this weekend.
Yeah, good point there. I mean, you can pass this week, unlike Monaco. So the long straight should give you plenty of opportunity.
Even in non-DRS zones as well. Like it's a really, really fun circuit. Great spectacle in terms of the scenery as well. And we've seen a lot of different passing at this track in the past as well. So especially with how tight the midfield is compared to the last time we were here as well, I don't see why this isn't going to be a lot of passing opportunities for people, regardless as to where you qualify.
I'm expecting a little bit of chaos this weekend. It's been kind of a tame in terms of incidents to start this season.
That's what I'm worried about. I'm not going to lie.
I think this could be the weekend where something gets a bit spicy at the front, or something happens where, maybe in the midfield something happens and it spices things up.
I don't think we've ever had a spicy Baku. I don't think
probably
we've ever
not
had that happen. No.
It just seems like the right time though. It just feels like we've kind of had a mellow start. Yeah. Great battle at the front with the Drivers' Championship. All right. Let's give us a little bit of incidents, a little bit of chaos, spice things up. A safety car too wouldn't be at the worst things either, but hopefully it's not our lineups that really get impacted at the end of it.
It would be. It definitely would be.
It probably would be, but I'm curious to see what you kind of gone from here on out, because I don't know what kind of changes you have made, but you can lead us off with maybe your third similarity here, whatever we have then.
Yeah, and I'll go with the highest price guy I've got remaining. I don't know if you've got him in the lineup. Actually, I think you might not have him in the lineup. But my second most expensive driver this weekend, I'm going to the Red Bull duo, and I've got Sergio Perez still in my lineup here. Looks very strong in terms of practice times. Look at FP1, P4 there, but of course, FP2 was top of the charts. It seems like things are going well for him at this circuit. He's had some strong qualifying in the past here at Baku. 5th, 8th, and 6th has been his qualifying results here. And of course, he does have a podium in his career at Azerbaijan. So things look to be going pretty well for Sergio Perez here. We'll see where he qualifies, how things go on race day. But I do think that this could potentially be a weekend where Perez sees that 18 million bounce back up a handful of $1,000 in F1 Fantasy, and maybe helps out your budget a little bit.
I as well have Sergio Perez in my lineup. Okay. He is my change this week. I didn't have him in for Monaco, but the practice times, you know how I love my practice times. He swayed me to put him in this weekend. And as a result, Charles Leclerc comes out of my lineup due to the budget concerns. So as much as I would love to have Leclerc in there instead of Sainz, I just don't have the cap room to make that work. So I'll take Sainz instead, and I'll keep, I'll take Leclerc out and put Perez in. This is his best chance so far to get his first podium for Red Bull. I would be honestly surprised if he doesn't get that done this weekend, unless there's some sort of incident, of course. But through the raw pace that Red Bull seems to have right now, practice seems to be very comfortable. All the quotes that I've seen from him, he's starting to really get comfortable with the car now as well.
Seems confident this weekend.
I think Perez could be a guy that could potentially win this race if Verstappen has a hiccup, or even on straight pace alone. Maybe Sergio Perez can rival his Red Bull teammate for the first time so far in his very young stint at the Red Bull team. So curious to see how he does. But yeah, clear for Sergio Perez for me to put him in there. It's a no-brainer. And he's also my turbo driver this weekend. I am going all in on Sergio Perez just for the practice speeds and the potential of having a podium. Despite the fact that he may not outpace his teammate, I'll still take the chances of him having a podium here and getting a strong result for Red Bull. So he is my third, and you can kind of guess Carlos Sainz is my fourth guy.
And sorry, I forgot to mention that he is my turbo as well. I'm buying in on Sergio Perez this weekend. But yes, I've also got Carlos Sainz if you want to lead that one off.
Yeah, Carlos Sainz, very, very good. We look back to the last time we were here, finished 7th for McLaren. So when you look at what McLaren did last time, Lando Norris in P8, Carlos Sainz in P7, very consistent from that constructor. But Carlos Sainz has been the driver that has changed teams over the offseason, that has really acclimated himself to the car the best. It has been a step above the rest, really, in terms of how well he's been able to cope with the car. When you look at Sergio Perez, Daniel Ricciardo, of course, he's had a very disappointing start to his McLaren tenure, but, he was very, very realistic about his expectations, while Carlos Sainz has adapted very well to his new surroundings at the Scuderia. So I'm expecting Carlos Sainz to be right up there. He seems very quick from the practice speeds as well. Ferrari, as you mentioned earlier, seems to be that kind of best of the rest team. And they may even have the second best car this weekend if Mercedes can't get their act together from what we saw on the practice timing sheet. So Carlos Sainz is definitely a play here. He could definitely be a turbo driver for you if you're not quite confident in Sergio Perez, or if you don't have Charles Leclerc in your lineup. I would look to Carlos Sainz as being an alternative option.
Yeah, definitely. Sainz, again, has never finished outside of the points here. See how often we say that? This guy is super, super consistent, and it's great to see him in a Ferrari that is starting to kind of crescendo back to the top as well. The starting hasn't been great for him at Baku, 2 9th starts and a 15th, but he's converted all of those into some pretty significant points as well. Best finish of 5th 3 years ago, 7th a couple years ago when we were last here. And then in that first race at Baku, he finished 8th from P15 on the grid as well. So he's been really, really strong at Baku. When you look at the Ferraris, looking pretty strong in practice times, right up there with Charles Leclerc, given what we saw from them at Monaco. A lot of positive momentum there. We'll see how things play out on the Saturday and the Sunday, of course, but I feel pretty solid about Carlos Sainz this weekend as well.
All righty. So you have not mentioned a change yet, sir.
Yes, that is correct.
You lead us off with your next one here. What have you got for shaking up your lineup from Monaco?
Well, of course, that means I've got 4 drivers right now, which means if I've made 2 changes, 1 driver and constructor change. Maybe a
Okay,
little bit surprising in
I'm
that one.
scared for this one because I think I know what you've done, and I'm a little bit nervous about
I
it.
don't think you do. I'm going to be honest because I'm going with Pierre Gasly in my lineup this weekend.
Copycat.
Hey, there you go. But the value on Pierre Gasly isn't fantastic when you look at 11.5 million and the guy that I had there previously in Esteban Ocon. But I just feel like there's some pretty solid potential there in that AlphaTauri and Pierre Gasly this weekend. Practice times are really solid. He's had some bad luck at Baku in his career, hasn't finished inside the points. He's made up positions on race day, but hasn't been great overall. But I think that after a pretty solid Monaco coming to Baku, I think that Gasly's kind of after an up and down start, finding that groove that he found last year again. I think Azerbaijan is going to be a really strong race for himself. Don't know about where Tsunoda mixes in because, of course, this is, again, his first career Grand Prix or race, I believe, at Baku. I believe they said that on one of the free practice sessions broadcast there. But I'm believing in Pierre Gasly this weekend. Practice times look good. I like the form he's been in recently back to Monaco. So I'm going to make the switch Esteban Ocon out of the lineup, Pierre Gasly in. Ocon could still be a good play, especially at the 10.5 million that he's still at. But I just believe in that AlphaTauri a little bit more than the Alpine this weekend.
I'm surprised you went away from your guy, Esteban Ocon. He's kind of like gotten you to a very high level.
I know.
But I like to switch up. I, of course, have Pierre Gasly in there as my 5th and final driver for my lineup. He's been in there since the very beginning, since Bahrain. So I haven't wavered on him yet, despite the lack of overall points haul that I get from him. But for his value and the possibilities that AlphaTauri has, specifically Gasly in that car, I do like what he brings to the table. I may end up switching it here down the line if AlphaTauri really does start to look towards 2022. But Pierre Gasly, his despite having a DNF the last time we were here, he showed really good on the practice speeds. And like I said, I love my practice speeds. So it makes a lot of sense for me to keep him in there. One more week, see what he does this week. If he has a bit more of a down week, maybe I look somewhere else next time out. But for me, I feel like I've said that the last couple of weeks, but this could really be kind of like that really line in the sand moment. He ran well at Monaco, so I'm hopeful that that momentum can really translate here to Azerbaijan, and I think it will. I think he could definitely do some damage here for AlphaTauri this weekend. So those are my 5 drivers, but you've changed your constructor, sir. What have you done?
I have. Do you wanna lead it off though? Because you haven't. You're sticking with Ferrari.
Yes, I'm sticking with Ferrari just for the actual pace that they've shown so far this weekend. I was contemplating on going back to McLaren. I looked at a whole bunch of other situations because I really do feel like this is a chaotic potential race and there could be some value. I looked at trying to maybe get the Red Bull as the constructor if I could make the money work and how that could really kind of, pan itself out if I wanted to go down to maybe like a Yuki Tsunoda or something like that for AlphaTauri and try and bite the bullet, because it seems like Red Bull could be on for their first 1-2 of the season. But I just couldn't quite make the money work, and I've kind of figured out that, as you have as well, that the driver overall lineup of having more money there than the constructor is more valuable long-term as well. So I've stayed with Ferrari here this week, and the practice speeds have looked good. I was initially going to go with McLaren, but with the timing sheets and how Ricciardo has kind of just been a little bit lackluster and hasn't quite fulfilled McLaren's full potential yet, I can't quite go with them this weekend, but Ferrari's going to stay in there for me. And they had a huge value jump as well from Monaco due to their really strong success. Of course, Leclerc did not start, but had the pole position, and Carlos Sainz got the P2 there. But Ferrari's staying there.
So I am making the change away from Ferrari, and this is kind of the gamble that I was mentioning earlier. I see some potential value with McLaren this weekend. They're down a bit in the budget. They're at, what is it here, 18.6 now million for your budget. And when you look at Ferrari and how they've jumped up, they're closer to 20 million now than they are to 18 million. Thought about keeping Ferrari in there. Looks really solid in practice times, all this stuff. But the McLarens look solid in terms of race pace. I think that they'll be in the conversation and probably still get through to Q3, but lower end in Q3. And I'm banking on whether it's chaos or whether it's just on track, the race pace and positions gained in that top 10. I think that there could be some big potential there. Daniel Ricciardo has been really solid at the circuit. Of course, he won there the first time from P10 on the grid, has looked much better in terms of practice times this weekend than he did at Monaco the entire time. So I'm believing in Daniel Ricciardo this weekend. Lando Norris was really strong the last time we were here. So taking a bit of a gamble, could easily backfire because Ferrari looks very strong once again. But going to McLaren also allows me to get Pierre Gasly, who I think could have a really strong run as well. So going a bit riskier here rather than Ocon and Ferrari, switching it up with McLaren, hoping for some positions gained on Sunday with Pierre Gasly here.
Yeah, it's not a bad bet. If McLaren are going to be coming from behind, you'd rather have that be on the race day than qualifying. So I think that makes a lot of sense from your perspective to make that kind of gamble, if you will, on that end. But I think that kind of does it for the fantasy kind of overall look for our lineups here. Let's make some picks, Kyle. Let's make our picks for the poll and, of course, the podium and the best of the rest. Do you want to lead us off here or should I? It's up to you.
Sure, I can lead it off. What are we starting with here?
We'll go with poll.
Pole position, I'll go boring with it. Max Verstappen. I think it's going to be a Red Bull weekend. We haven't really seen it from Mercedes unless they're just hiding their cards, but we kind of thought that might have been the case at Monaco, and then it didn't come to fruition, although Valtteri Bottas was on a pretty hot lap there before Charles Leclerc decided to bin it in the swimming pool. But Max Verstappen, we could see a bit of a dogfight there with Perez, which could get a little bit tasty. But I think it's Max Verstappen's weekend to lose. So I think he's going to get pole position here.
The last thing Red Bull needs is another Ricciardo and Verstappen incident at Baku this time around. I'll say that. But
they would sack Sergio Perez on the spot.
Oh God, I feel so bad for him if anything like that ever gets to that point. But I'm going with pole with Max Verstappen as well. Just been on quite the roll recently. He's never finished outside the top two so far to start this season. I don't really see that trend changing on Saturday or Sunday here for the Grand Prix. So makes a lot of sense to keep Verstappen. I think Perez could be in there for a one-lap shout speed, but I think Verstappen just will have the edge over his Red Bull Racing teammate. But let's go with the best of the rest first here before we look at the podium. Since you went first with the poll, I'll go first here with this one. I'm expecting a little bit of chaos with this one, so I'm going with Pierre Gasly. I think he could be a sneaky one for best of the rest. I'm not quite sold on McLaren from their speed. I think, like you said, the race pace could be there, but Pierre Gasly could maybe do something here. Hasn't quite had the opportunity to really pass cars so far to start this season. I think he'll be very aggressive, which could be, touch and go, but I'll take Pierre Gasly and AlphaTauri as the best of the rest.
I'm going to go with Charles Leclerc for this one. Both times at the circuit has qualified mediocre 8th and 13th, but has converted that into really solid point stays with 5th and 6th finishes. He seems to have a really fast car, has everything to prove after Monaco and not being able to see what he could turn that pole position into at his home track. Another street circuit here, although it's a very different street circuit. I'm buying into the Ferrari hype a little bit here. So I'm going to say Charles Leclerc gets it done for Ferrari as best of the rest.
All righty. Who you got for third on the podium? Who's going to take home third place?
Third on the podium, I think, is a question of whether you think we're going to get chaos or maybe a little bit of normality in that one. And you know what? I was going to go normal with it, but screw it. Let's have a little bit of chaos. Why don't we? Charles Leclerc gets the podium. He should have last time out. He's best of the rest and on the podium in third position. Okay,
well, I have that as well, but I didn't quantify him as best of the rest.
That's very fair. That's very fair.
But yeah, I have Charles Leclerc in third as well. I think the pace that he's shown, and he's out there for a little bit of redemption this time around. I just like the speed of the Ferrari, man. I think he could do some damage. As much as it pains me to take him out of my lineup this week for Sergio Perez, it is because I think Sergio Perez will have that one position better than him, and that is P2 ahead of Leclerc on the podium step. And of course, Max Verstappen is my Grand Prix winner for the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. But I just think there's a lot of potential between Sergio Perez and Charles Leclerc this weekend. They both seem to be on it in terms of the practice speeds, and their one-lap pace has been nothing short of spectacular when they're comfortable with their car, and it seems like Perez is starting to get to that, if not already there. And Charles Leclerc, of course, a world-class talent. He's going to do some bits this weekend, and he could get up there for Ferrari and get yet a second consecutive podium for that constructor. So that's my podium. I kind of expanded it all into one there, but what are you going with for second and first?
Because unfortunately, we do have the same. Verstappen wins the race. Sergio Perez second. I think this is Red Bull's weekend to lose. They've got all the positive momentum going. Free practice looks good. Sergio Perez looks confident in the car this weekend. Everything should be them with the 1-2, or at the very least, two cars on the podium. Yeah. Have to this weekend to really take that stranglehold at kind of the circuits that suit you more than the Mercedes. We saw it at Monaco. And we've seen it for a while, honestly, where Red Bull is always very strong on the street circuits. And for some reason, the Mercedes are much better suited to your typical actual race circuits that are always there versus the temporary ones. But I think to spice things up, add one more in there. Where does Lewis Hamilton finish? If we've got the same top three, same podium, Lewis Hamilton isn't in there. Does he have a bad day, still finish in the points? Is Mercedes off the pace a little bit and he finishes 4th, 5th, or does he get into a little bit of shenanigans and maybe doesn't finish the race? What do you think happens there?
I'll go with a P5 finish for Lewis Hamilton.
Okay.
I think that's I think he could finish 4th, but this hasn't been his greatest track. So I think Bottas might have the edge actually at Mercedes this weekend, despite him being late on his flight to Baku with the delay from Finland. He ended up getting there, of course, on time. But I think Bottas might have the edge over Hamilton this weekend after the unfortunate events that happened with Monaco. He's out to prove something. Hamilton, of course, is out to avenge what happened to him in Monaco as well. They're going to be very much under pressure this weekend. It is a huge statement weekend for Red Bull and Mercedes as well. It's a big kind of turning point, I feel like, in the season here. Red Bull with the Constructors' Championship lead. How does Mercedes answer? I think Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas will eventually find their speed. It's hard to deny them on race pace alone. So I'll say that with the opportunity to overtake, and Hamilton and Bottas is very much experienced over the rest of the field, they can get inside the top 5 to 6 area there. So that's what I'm going with.
I'll say he gets the P4. I'll say that Charles Leclerc has just an absolute banger of a weekend, goes out, qualifies well, races well, kind of makes up for what was lost at Monaco, even though he did qualify well in that one. He just didn't have an opportunity to actually prove the race pace or anything like that. But I'll go with that. This is a big weekend for Mercedes, I think, whether we kind of see the same trend of them falling further back from Red Bull, or whether they bring in extra something on Saturday and Sunday that we haven't seen so far from free practice, which could absolutely be the case. Mind games, everything like that. It's all in the playbook when you're in a championship battle here. But you've already lost the Drivers' Championship lead to Max Verstappen right here. Seems like it's going in the direction, unless something happens to Verstappen on Sunday, where that lead is going to extend. Can't let it get too out of hand. Can't snowball and have more and more issues and have another bad race day and all this kind of stuff. Can't let the negativity kind of snowball at this point. So just have a solid day, and then you get back to some of the circuits that suit you a little bit better as we get to France and some more of the regular circuits on the calendar. But a big opportunity this weekend for Red Bull to kind of distance themselves from Mercedes early on here in the championship battle.
How are you feeling about, I was just curious to ask, how are you feeling about my prediction preseason of Red Bull winning the Constructors' Championship? How confident are you in the Mercedes that they can fight back?
So the big thing with that is basically how quickly Sergio Perez became comfortable with the Red Bull. And we've seen it go up and down so far this season. He qualified. He nearly got pole at Imola, and then we've seen some issues on race day, stuff like that. This weekend is a big opportunity for Perez to go out and have that day that they've been hoping for, where he's up there on the podium, second to Verstappen, maybe even challenging Verstappen, who even knows. But I think this is a big, maybe turning point of the season for Perez to where he can gain confidence the rest of the season. I do still believe that as the season goes along, Mercedes is going to battle back and it's going to be a tight battle. I don't think it's going to be as wide of a gap between Mercedes and Red Bull as I originally thought it would. But I still just can't bet against Mercedes at this point. Just can't bet against them. So as the season goes along, it's going to be fascinating, but I just can't quite bet against Mercedes just yet.
I think that's a fair point. They're just so potent when it comes down to crunch time. So I'm just happy that I went with that. So it's something different. It's a storyline that we can watch as a season.
It's looking pretty interesting at this point. I didn't think it would be as close or even as in this favor of as Red Bull as it has been so far. And honestly, they've maybe fumbled a couple of opportunities to even be up even more when you look at Bahrain and how they weren't able to get the win there. When you look at how some of the strategies played, such as at Catalonia, stuff like that, they could be even in a better situation. So going to be fascinating to see how things play out the rest of the season and maybe look back at some of these early season events and what could have been some turning points at the end of a season-long championship here.
Yeah, it's just been absolutely insane. It's unfortunate that it's taken this long for two teams to really go at it for the drivers and constructors championships in the last season of this era of cars. So hopefully we won't have to wait that long in the next era before we get another championship battle like the one this one is shaping up to be, because it's been spectacular so far. And it's just what F1 fans have been kind of craving for a couple of years now. Verstappen versus Hamilton, and it has delivered on all accounts so far. So it's going to be curious to see how Baku shakes out, and as well as the Grand Prix after it as well. But I think that'll wrap it up for the Azerbaijan Grand Prix preview episode. Any final thoughts before we wrap up yet another preview episode, Kyle?
Yeah, looking forward to this race weekend here for Azerbaijan. As we've kind of alluded to multiple times throughout this episode, it's a track that has a history of chaos. And whether it's the Ricardo Verstappen stuff, the Vettel Hamilton stuff, there's been a lot of different things. And Stroll, of course, the podium and getting beat at the line by Bottas, I think it was there, which was a little bit funny. Should have finished P2 there. But anyways, just a track that kind of out of nowhere has quickly become one of the most chaotic, fun races on the calendar, and very much looking forward to see if we get a normal race this weekend or the typical Baku shenanigans chaos. Really looking forward to this one.
Does Sebastian Vettel hit somebody under the safety car again?
I don't think so, but I think we could see a bit of a resurgent day from Aston Martin. Free practice times weren't great, but Stroll's been pretty solid here. Of course, as we mentioned, got that podium here. Vettel has been solid here when he isn't hitting people under the safety car. So I think we could see a solid day from Aston Martin here.
Over under 1.5 safety cars in this one.
Oh, that's a really good line. I'll say under. I'll say we get one safety car and one virtual safety car.
Okay, I'll say the over just to be. Let's go for the chaos here. Let's just spice it up. I'm living for some chaos.
I don't know if I can handle chaos on a Sunday morning.
I am not getting up at 5 a.m. I can guarantee you that. 6 a.m. I can deal with. 5 a.m.
Yeah, it's an hour earlier,
a bit too
right?
much. Yeah, so I'm not going to be in the mood for that Grand Prix live, but hopefully when I wake up on the Sunday, it will be a little bit of a nice surprise, and hopefully my fantasy lineup and your fantasy lineup, because it is very similar, ends up very well at the end of the day. But that'll wrap it up for the F1 Baku Grand Prix preview episode. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at The Green Flag Pod, as well as Twitter at The Green Flag Pod. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. We would really, really appreciate it. All the links to our social channels will be in the description of the YouTube video. Myself and Kyle will be on the Grid Network on YouTube live on Saturday when you're watching this, probably, to kind of recap qualifying for F1, as well as kind of get you set up as well for the NASCAR weekend ahead for the Xfinity Series and the Cup Series. And I will be back on Sunday on that channel to recap the Azerbaijan Grand Prix as well. So no race recaps probably on this channel this weekend, but they'll be back once again the following weekend for the All-Star race for NASCAR, and F1 is off for the next weekend after that. But stay tuned for that. Make sure you go check that out. Their channel will be linked in the description as well. But for this episode, I've been Lukas Wacker. He's been Kyle Cushman, signing off for now. We will talk to you very, very soon. Enjoy the racing this weekend, everybody.